There's a lot of things I respect about the Bad Batch series, and one of them was that they didn't rely on Jedi trickery as a crutch. This is very important for the show, as we see the clones suffer a lot during their travels. They need to protect Omega, Hunter and Crosshair, Wrecker, Tech. All these guys have to rely on their ingenuity, on their battle readiness, everything other than the Force, other than lightsabers, other than acrobatics. And it was true until the last season, when we see that Asajj Ventress is in fact alive and well, and she is more or less involved with the Hidden Path, a secret organization helping out Jedi survivors and other defectors from the Empire. We connected the dots, of course, by seeing that Quinlan Vos was also alive when we saw that Obi-Wan discovered this in the Obi-Wan series, meaning that if Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress are both alive, they will eventually end up working for the Rebellion. Now, we thought this was important the moment we saw Asajj Ventress, but what I realized is that after the finale, seeing that Omega is now grown up and the other clones are older, we know that Omega in the end ends up going to fight for the Rebellion, being a pilot for them. This is a clear indication that things have gotten dire. As we see in the Andor series, as we see in Rogue One, now it is time for battle. There are no more different factions spread across the galaxy fighting relentlessly against a giant empire, an organized and structured empire. This time around, as we see in the original trilogy, the Rebellion is a concise organization under the helm of Mon Mothma. Therefore, it is pretty clear, I think, that Asajj Ventress will end up fighting for the Rebellion too. Now, I want to discuss today why this is important. You see, in the original trilogy, we only hear of the Rebellion from afar, and once Luke joins them in A New Hope, Luke is not a Jedi helping out the Rebellion with his Jedi acuity. Obi-Wan has abandoned them altogether. He is only focused on Luke. Yoda is on Dagobah, so not a lot of Jedi in the Rebellion midst. But what does the Empire have? Well, during Imperial times, during the early Imperial times, at the very least, we see that they have Inquisitors, which are Jedi hunters, essentially. And even though they will somehow or another be involved in this rebel fight, they can use their prowess. They are Force users, which makes them superior to just soldiers using blasters. But by the time of the original trilogy, we don't see any more Inquisitors, but the Empire still does have Darth Vader, a Sith Lord who can use his power and his might much more than the rebel soldiers, as we see in the comics. The famous line, "All I'm surrounded by is fear and dead men." He kills hundreds of rebel soldiers just by himself, meaning that the power dynamic is disproportionate at this point. This is why Asajj Ventress and hopefully Quinlan Vos joining the Rebellion early on is very, very important. Even before Luke Skywalker joined their midst, I think that a show about Clone Rebellion, we have discussed this earlier, I would love to see that, but if we end up seeing a grown-up Omega joining the Rebellion, and in the Rebellion's midst, you also have Asajj Ventress going up against, let's say, Inquisitors, for example, that would just be beautiful. That would be perfect, simply because it would balance things out. You know that the Rebellion will have trouble if they only use soldiers, if they only use ships. At this point, even using these resources, they are outnumbered, they are outgunned, and they are outmatched because the Empire has vast resources, superior technology, and sheer numbers. The Rebellion is at a low point even in those departments, let alone if the Inquisitor joins or Darth Vader, they immediately are at a huge disadvantage. But now think about it. The Rebellion goes on a fight, they have an Inquisitor, they have Darth Vader, enter Asajj Ventress, enter Quinlan Vos. Now, the Bad Batch finale doesn't actually tell us when exactly Omega joins the Rebellion, meaning that Omega and Asajj Ventress will link up. As we saw, Asajj Ventress had a very strong affinity for Omega during the later episodes of Bad Batch Season 3, so she will already be familiar with Omega, and once she joins the Rebellion, they will probably have some adventures together, meaning that of course we might see this in a future animated show. As we've discussed many a times, we'll love to see another clone series this time around. They are not the government, they are not the Republic, they are the rebels. They are the outsiders, meaning the clones, Rex, Hauser, Cody perhaps, and even Echo. During this show, during Rex's adventures and the clones, while they're fighting the Empire, they will of course be sometimes outmatched by Inquisitors. This is why I'm thinking structurally for this show. I know that they will need all the help they can get. If you see the story arcs, you know that once clones are involved, in the original Clone Wars series, you know that once clones were involved, you had separatist droids. So everything went sort of in the middle. Whoever could beat their opponent would win. But sometimes if Jedi generals were also involved, like Anakin, like Obi-Wan, like Ahsoka, you would see General Grievous get involved too. Perhaps Count Dooku. So things would always balance out in the Clone Wars show sometimes. And I would love for this to be true in this new series as well, meaning that Asajj would get ample amount of time to show her skills off. I mean, just imagine Asajj Ventress versus one of the Inquisitors. Asajj Ventress versus the Grand Inquisitor even. That would be just a great duel, a great show. And of course, the ultimate show, the ultimate duel, Asajj Ventress versus Darth Vader. Don't forget that in the original Clone Wars cartoon, you have Asajj Ventress versus a young Anakin Skywalker. In fact, the scar that Anakin has on the side of his eye was done by a young Sith assassin by the name of Asajj Ventress, who was then under the tutelage of Count Dooku. As we always say, it all connects. It's like poetry, it rhymes. The immortal words of George Lucas still ring true to this day. I mean, I would love to see that in this animated show. In whatever form it comes, I welcome it thoroughly. There are just numerous possibilities knowing that Asajj is now still alive. She was presented in the Bad Batch Season 3. She survived, of course. She went to live on. We know through the Obi-Wan series that Quinlan Vos is alive too, so there's a lot of possibilities, and the matches, the duels, the possible deaths, we might finally see Quinlan Vos die in this new series. How would he die? Asajj Ventress too might actually die too. So there's a lot of possibilities because, as we always, refer to, this is kind of a hindrance, kind of a problem for Star Wars, but it is true at the very end that in the original series, we just don't see these characters, and the reason might be that they die. However, with the Bad Batch series, we saw that might not actually be true. Just because we don't see them in the original trilogy doesn't mean that they are not alive. Also with Ahsoka, of course, that rings true as well. So I would love to know your thoughts down below, so talk to me down in the comments.